10:24, BBC Radio Humberside. This is James Pykos. Now, yesterday, you may have seen this online. A man from Hull has gone viral. That's the term they use when something gets very popular and it gets shared all over Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. His name's Vince. That's how he's been described on the paper. I think he prefers to be called Vinnie. Yesterday, Vinnie was the subject of a Sky News report about Brexit. This is what he had to say.
I voted out. I think it's good for the country because the country wants to stand on its own 2 feet. Well, Scotland's another thing is, if they want to stay in it, what they'll have to do is, they'll have to join up with EU, go to use their euro, and then we can just put a fence right across and then they get their own passports.
Job done. And then Sky News took that quote and put it on their website, saying if it was up to Vince from Hull, a fence should divide England from Scotland following the EU result. That got hundreds of retweets. Vinnie's on the line now. Morning, how are you?
Morning, sir. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. You've got a huge reaction.
I know, it's unbelievable. I can't believe it myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so do you stand by your comments then? Would you fence off Scotland?
Yeah, I do. I made a bit of a mistake when I said England instead of the UK, but the point is I'm not into politics, believe me. But at the end of the day, Scotland wanted to break away from the UK quite a long time ago, but it never happened because it just didn't happen. But now there's all this trouble coming, with Britain and with Europe. Now we've voted out, right? Now they want to continue doing something else. But the problem is, I don't think it's off to work from the UK, do you?
Do you think, do you sort of regret that comment about Scotland being part of England? Because you got an awful lot of response online.
I apologise to people who got it wrong and they say, it's a part of the UK. But as far as I'm concerned, I can walk from England straight through into Scotland. I don't have no problem. Do you see what I mean? There's not a problem at all going from one, from the UK into Scotland, right? But the problem is with this Europe thing, right?
Yeah.
You want both the best worlds. It's not off to happen because Scotland isn't really big enough. The population is very low anyhow. So the UK has got more population, which is, I've looked it up and it was a pretty big population in the UK to Scotland.
Well, I'll give you an example, Vinnie. London's bigger than Scotland.
Prime Minister's going. Do you see what I mean? I think they're just trying to make the name for themselves. But we've got to all get on with it. At the end of the day is, the Scotland need the UK and the UK needs Scotland.
So you're a loyalist. You want Scotland. You want the union to remain in place.
Yeah.
What do you make of the reaction you've had? I mean, have you looked through the Facebook and the Twitter comments about what people have been saying about your video?
Well, I've had people say vote for the MP, get as an MP. Well, that's never off to happen because I'm not that educated to do all like that. But the problem is at the end of the day is if people can't have the views, right, what the UK are doing, and the same with Scotland, they've got their views as well. But the problem is they're leading up the wrong way. Do you see what I mean? It's like, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, one of the reasons I ask you about all this is that you represent the man in the street, really.
I do. I'm a working man. I'm
exactly.
55. I've worked since I was 15. I've worked all my life. I've worked for the councils. I've worked for many big tyre companies. I've worked for myself. I've done everything I've done, and I'm all for the people.
Well, that's it. You're a tyre fitter now. You've done a number of jobs. Go on.
I'm managing director of a company.
Right.
I still fit tyres at 55. I still do the job. I'm a working man, right?
And I just wonder, the reason I'm asking you this, Vince, is that, as you say, you're a working man, you're the man in the street, and you have been pilloried online. You've had the mickey taken out of you, you've had people make some absolutely, quite rude and unnecessary comments, in my view. Do you think that is part of the problem? That, one of the reasons we ended up voting for Brexit was that people like yourself felt that they weren't being listened to, like they weren't being taken seriously.
Well, I don't think that the working person in the UK, or maybe certain parts of Scotland, have been listened properly to the MPs. The problem is the MPs, because every MP I know who's gone up the chute to get to where they are, to get popular, they all go to London or whatever, right? And then you don't see them. You see what I mean?
I don't know. That's interesting, because if I asked, for example, some of the MPs, you're in East Hull, aren't you?
I mean, I'll tell you what.
Carl Turner,
he's
pretty regular, isn't he? You see Carl Turner around East Hull a lot, don't you?
No, I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him at all. I'll tell you what, you know I've seen most? Peter Levy.
You've seen more of Peter Levy?
Garage.
Does he indeed? Well, there's your claim to fame.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. I haven't seen him for a while, but he's the most person I've ever seen from the radio or whatever.
So the point you're making is that the politics and the media, it's lost touch with normal people.
Well, my honest opinion, my honest real opinion to me outright, I think they've let the UK down. The MPs that have let the UK down, they've let everything get out of hand. All the cities in the thing that they're trying to save money here, are starving to make money. But the problem is they've not come out of the little bubble to see what's happening.
Why do you think that we're stronger outside of Europe?
Well, we probably was a bit stronger in Europe. Don't get it's a mixed thing, but outside, what the problem is I've got this right. With me being like a director and I set people in, young people, right? They don't give them the training what they give them. When I first started training to do a job, right, because it's all about getting a job, paying into the system and getting better. That's what I've always been taught it's about, right? But end of the day is, you get someone now, right, to send them to college to come, they can read out of a book, but they can't use the tools. So the apprenticeships, I don't think that they're good enough. They need to be with companies, and British companies need to show them how to do things.
It sounds to me like what you're saying is you're fed up with bureaucracy. You're fed up with paper pushing. You want people to be more practical.
That's all it is. It's paper pushing. Let's get our feet on the ground. Like at the end of the day, get on our own 2 feet. Let's get on with it, because we've got the farming, we've got the meat industry here, so we've got all that. We can grow stuff. We've even got tomato. We can do all sorts now. We're in a modern world. Do you know,
Vince? Yeah. Do you not think that someone like you should be working into politics? I mean, you're a man with ideas. You're a man with opinions. You said you weren't clever enough, but I don't think that's true.
I'm not. Look, I've worked since I was 15. I'll tell you what. I used to go picking taters, right, up near Leven, for something like 20 pence a bag to get some money extra, right? Now, so I've done it. I've milked cows, I've done all sorts, I've worked in garages, I've worked for other people, and now I'm a director of my own tyre company.
Which is why I think your next step should be politics, Vince. I think you should go for it, prove them all wrong.
People might think, but I mean, yeah, people are criticising me on this, but I mean, at the end of the day is, right, I don't like to drive down the street and see people with their hands over their face, people living on the street. We shouldn't have that in 2016. The elderly... That's another thing. The older generation, they're getting older. I'm not to get older, right? We've got to rely on our own people. You can't rely on everybody else.
Vince, I'll ask you one last question. We've got to get to the news in a sec, so I've got to be dead brief. But do you regret doing the piece with Sky? Would you do it again?
I don't regret it at all. I maybe got that England run, UK, but apologies because that's a bit of England's. But at the end of the day is, they wanted to be out before, right? They never got out because the UK basically overruled it a bit. Do you see what I mean? They're staying in with the UK. But I mean, at the end of the day is, they've got to get the facts right.
Well, Vince, it's been a pleasure to speak to you, or Vinnie as you prefer to be known. Thank you very much for coming on. There is man of the people, man of the street, made the star of a Sky News documentary. If you want to see it, I've just retweeted it. It's on my Twitter feed now, @Pykos. Go and have a look, judge for yourself. I personally think that he's been a little bit stitched up by him, but you can have your own views on that. And here is just one last time, this is the report. The man who wanted the fence between Scotland and England.
I voted out. I think it's good for the country because the country wants to stand on its own 2 feet. Well, Scotland's another thing is, if they want to stay in it, what they'll have to do is, they'll have to join up with EU, go to use their euro, and then we can just put a fence right across and then they get their own passports.
Across Northern Lincolnshire and East Yorkshire.
This is BBC Radio Humberside.